Hello and a warm welcome to the CNBC Africa special broadcast in partnership with SES, coming to you live from the sidelines of the 27th session of the World Economic Forum on Africa, currently taking place in the city of Durban. My name is Gugulethu Celen, and I have a wonderful panel of experts, each with their level of expertise within the industry. Joining me on my left is Laurent Petit, who's the head of Africa at SES. Also following us is Dr. Siyabonga Cwele, who's the South African Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, followed by Sneha Shah, Managing Director for Africa at Thomson Reuters, and Vikas Sega, Head of Digital at McKinsey & Company. What I really want us to hope to do is to set context to the environment that we currently operate in, being the African continent and being Africans who are actively looking to make a difference in the digitalization in the African space. Laurent, I'd like us to pick up with you first by getting your view and perspective regarding the lay of the land and the status quo regarding digitalization on the African continent.
Sure. So good morning. For us, digitization, it's all about growth and economic development. It's about bringing knowledge and skills to a wider population. It's about making the world available to each and everyone in Africa. It's a big challenge. We're not there yet. We're here as a company, SES, and our logo, which says Beyond Frontiers, is precisely all about that. We're here to bring people together. We use our technologies and a fleet of 65 satellites around the world, 22 of them covering Africa directly, to enable people to get connected, whether it's getting connected on the internet or getting the latest news and entertainment from television by bringing them, for instance, HD channels directly into their homes. So, as I was saying, it's all about making sure that people can develop their own knowledge, their own life, and become more active in the economies of the African continent going forward. That's what we're here for. That's what we're trying to help. And obviously, as we develop in Africa, and in the coming years, we'll be able to increase that level.
Interconnectedness and connectivity is what you've alluded to. Minister Cwele, I'd like us to come to you by getting your view on the context-setting theme regarding the conversation, especially given that from a government point of view, we do understand that digitalization is a priority despite the delays that we've experienced.
Thank you very much. And if you look at our continent and developing countries like South Africa, there are challenges. We'll be first to accept that there are challenges, but there are a lot of opportunities. Bearing in mind that we still got a very low even internet penetration. So the potential for growth is huge in Africa. So I think that's what we're exploiting. If you look, for instance, the internet users, internet exchange points, those are things which are growing very fast within the African continent, which make the affordability of digitization a reality. But to us also as African countries, it really offers us an opportunity to leapfrog in socio-economic development, to try to be on par with our developed counterparts at the shortest time. So those are the things, I think, the commitments which we have seen from the African governments in terms of Agenda 2063, where we're focusing now in putting the basic things right, like infrastructure, making sure that there's peace, there's focus on human development. So for us to achieve that Agenda 2063, we have to make those things a reality. And that's why many countries are digitizing, we are innovating as Africans. There's a lot of innovation also originating. And we've got huge content, which offers an opportunity for businesses in the future.
Mm-hmm. Sneh, I'd like to come to you to get your views. The Minister did allude to Agenda 2063, headed by the AU Commission. But the truth of the matter is that the world of digitalization is also in the now, despite it being a theme and a concept that is often perceived to be a few years away.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's fascinating for me about this continent is that there's such a contrast between, what some economies are doing and what others are doing. So in some cases you see very manual court systems, very manual land management systems, very manual education systems, and very aid-based and commodity-based economies. And then on the other hand, you see world-leading innovation. So something like M-Pesa, which is the first digital payment system in the world, right? In many countries like Rwanda and Kenya, you can actually go online to get everything from your passport to sort of any government service. And so I think what's amazing for me, and I think this is where the opportunity is that the minister's talking about, is that we don't have those legacy infrastructures to get rid of, and so we can move very quickly as a continent to this new world. And for me, that's very, very exciting.
Of course, we want to get your point of view here, Vikas, especially some of the interesting facts and figures that you have on the ground regarding the status quo of digitalization on the African continent.
Sure, Gugu. Firstly, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And I think maybe it's easier to set the stage with a bit of a story or bits of facts, right? We've at McKinsey just published a report on, what role government productivity, and we think it's a $3.5 trillion opportunity globally. Let me just break this down a little bit. So globally, governments spend about $35 trillion a year. It's about a third of the world's GDP. Within that, we think that there's a productivity opportunity for governments to improve the lives of citizens that they serve. And generally, despite this spend growing dramatically, and if you look at actually what happened in the last 200 years ago, governments didn't spend a lot of money. Now it's about a third of the GDP. But despite this growth, the satisfaction of citizens and with the services that government provide has declined. And we think there's an opportunity to improve the productivity, create $3.5 trillion, and a third of that, so $1 trillion that will come from digitization and use of advanced analytics.
A third?
A third, $3.5 trillion. And just to put that in context, $3.5 trillion is the sum total of fiscal deficits of all governments globally. So that's the impact that we think digitization can have. And it's not about computers and data, and it really is about enabling citizens to live fuller lives, more fulfilled lives, and for governments to fulfill the promises that they make. And I'm happy to get into a bit more into what are these things that we can do with digitization that governments can do, especially given the theme of inclusive growth, which is what we're talking about in WEF here at Durban. I think that this is really something that we've got to capitalize on.
What are the key elements that we need to get right between now and then to ensure that digitalization on the African continent is prioritized, it improves inclusion for everybody in the economy, and of course sees significant economic growth and GDP per capita form for each citizen on the continent? Because let's start with you as we get closing commentary, making our way down the panel.
Yeah, no, Gugu, I mean, I think that it's been a fascinating discussion. In my mind, I think that an imperative here actually is from some of the things that we were talking about towards the end of our conversation is around creating supply of the right talent. And if you look at examples of economies across the world where there actually has been great growth using a particular capability, in India, for example, with its IT sector, a lot of that has been supply-led. So make the talent available, and then the private sector, so government looks at policy, creates policy that allows this supply of talent to be created with the right digital skills, with the right collaborative skills that we were talking about. And then the private sector comes in to basically capitalize on that to then create the digital solutions and use digitization, for the good of the private sector, or to digitize government, as we had started off when we spoke about at the beginning of the conversation. But I think that's the way that's where I think the solution of this and what the unlock of this is. I think the applications are many.
Yeah.
The innovation that we're seeing on the continent is absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
The talent is here. I think this is more about scaling it, as opposed to making a massive course correction.
Scaling opportunities. Sneha, very briefly, your thoughts?
So I would agree with Vikas on the supply, but I would add two other things. One is mindset, and the other one is partnership. I think we need to start creating more, I'd like to say playgrounds, right? But these little sandboxes where we can play with these ideas with government and private sector in a way that then we can learn the lessons and then figure out how to scale.
Minister Kwele?
Yeah, I think I agree that we have to deal with, as government, we're more preoccupied with supply side measure. Infrastructure must reach every corner. one of the key things you're asking, give commitments in terms of time frame. Before the end of this financial year, we'll put a request for proposal for private sector for the rollout of infrastructure, which is going to cost us, we estimated the region of about 60 billion rand. But we're finalizing with National Treasury the financial modeling so that it can be sustainable. So, so the issues of infrastructure everywhere is key, but we have to quickly shift to demand side issues. Who's going to manufacture these gadgets we're going to need? We need millions and millions of them here in South Africa. So that's why we're putting more incentive for manufacturing and also incentivizing those who are putting relevant applications for the access by the consumers. If you look at the African continent, it's a huge market for these gadgets, which need to be manufactured in African countries. We cannot always import these. So those are the critical steps. And of course, the consumer is a key.
Exactly.
We must always look at the needs of a consumer, which is changing. Thank you.
Indeed. Laurent, very briefly, your closing remarks to ensure that digitalization takes place.
What is critical is that governments work together with the private sector to make the right and the smart choices. We've observed in the past that when government make the right decisions and go for a cost-benefit analysis which is going to help them precisely make those right decisions, we've observed that then the outcome is much quicker and much better. So it's all about partnering between governments and private sector to make the smart choices.
Indeed. Partnerships, providing infrastructure, ensuring opportunities are present, and scaling up on the developments that take place. Well, that is how we wrap up our view and conversation regarding digitalization in Africa. A big thank you to the audience members who've participated and engaged with us in conversation today, and of course my panelists, Laurent Petit, who's the head of Africa for SES Africa, followed by Dr. Siyabonga Cwele, South African Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Sneha Shah, Managing Director for Thomson Reuters Africa, and Vikas Sega, Head of Digital at McKinsey & Company. Do be sure to continue to keep the conversation going on social media, hashtag Changing Frontiers, to give us more perspective beyond frontiers regarding the conversation on digitalization. From myself, Kukuletu Tucele and the team, it's goodbye for now.